Welcome, everyone, to another special episode of Beyond the Hood with Tractor Zoom. I'm your host, Andy Campbell, and we typically release Beyond the Hood episodes every 2 weeks, and episodes that focus on fueling equipment dealers' growth. And this one, though, is going to be a special episode because the equipment market is moving fast. So for reference, we're sitting on July 31st as today. About 2 weeks ago, Deere announced massive layoffs. Just yesterday, AGCO released their second quarter earnings, which are well below expectations. We see what is happening to the manufacturers in this market. What is this doing to the dealers? What is this doing to equipment supply, equipment value? That is why we're having this special episode that we're dubbing the Tractor Zoom Trends in 10. So let's see if I can keep this under 10 minutes. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this right now is because I'm following a pair of combines on Steffes Group's auction that are selling right now. A pair of John Deere 9870s STSs. They sit with about 2,000 SEP hours. The other one has about 2,300 SEP hours on this. They've hit the end of their bid, but it is slowly extending as those auctions do. There's an incredibly low volume of bids on this, and one of the reasons why I'm particularly watching this is because we bought one almost just like this about a year and a half ago. So I'm kind of feeling bad right now about myself that we could have waited and got a much better deal. So if this happens to close during this short podcast, I will let you guys know. It's an older model, but it's still indicative of where this market is going, especially these Class 8 combines. So let's start with Class 8 combines, huh? And really, even before we get there, I'll just mention the Class 5s and 6s have always been kind of steady Eddie. I know it's not a big volume and it's not a big risk on dealers' lots, and they are what they are. They're still steady. Class 7s, though, from a price volatility standpoint, I've seen those level off quite a bit this year. I know they're still making them, but the amount of average turns that are happening across dealers' lots and the price that we're seeing at auction has lost a lot of that volatility. So I see them starting to enter into that similar category, that similar cohort as those Class 5s and Class 6s. But the Class 8s, huh? So Case IH, the 8250, the ones that have been trending this year, we've seen those drop about 10% year over year and continuing to show a little bit of weakness in the last 30 days of sales. When we move over to the gorilla in the room, the John Deere S780s, we recorded 44 auctions of these in 2022. Compare that with 160 that we've recorded so far this year, and 80 of those have just come in the last 2 months. So really seeing dealers' lots unload on these, and for a good reason. They're high value, obviously with combines being a high risk, and you're getting close to that end of sale season leading up to harvest. So what have they done for values? We saw those in the springtime drop 6% versus what they were in 2023. Now you throw in planting season in there, throw in a couple months break, and boom, they're down another 6% in June and July. Now, Wheeler just last week had a big auction for a dealer in Missouri. They sold 5 of these. All of them, though, hit that 5 to 6% below the spring 2024 trend. So while those are lower than the spring 2024 trend, I'm not seeing a big drop off as I move from early July to late July in these things. There will be some that will continue to sell at the end of this month and then beginning of August, but I'm going to anticipate that those will probably hold steady at least up until the end of the harvest selling season. Moving on up to Class 9s and 10s. I'm seeing moderate price pressure, but not nearly to the extent that we saw with Class 8s. I'm only seeing Class 9s and 10s down about 3 to 6%. The machines, yes, are higher value, but there's not nearly as many of those out there, and the potential buyers are doing okay on their balance sheets. So they might have the cash on hand, they might have a good debt to asset ratio, and they've got the ability to buy the few machines that are out there. We'll see as supply continues to ramp. If it does continue to ramp from the manufacturers, that might put more pressure on this. But for right now, 3 to 6% down year over year on those Class 9s and 10s. Sticking in the harvest category, but moving over to headers, I'll make this simple. Platform and row crop headers are telling the Icarus story. When they shot up, and if they shot up high in 21 and 22, we're seeing them fall further. For later model row crop and platform headers, Most of those are down only about 5% year over year and continuing to kind of hold their value throughout the summer. Obviously, you've got some nuances, especially as you look at aging choppers. You've got different variations, especially on some of John Deere's chopping corn heads based on, like, was it pre-2013, post? But outside of those nuances, 5% for those 10 years and older. But for the late models, I'm seeing those drop that 10 to 15% year over year pretty consistently. Okay, let's talk row crop tractors. Definitely the cornerstone of the market, and one of the pieces of wisdom that I picked up from a lot of the sages in this industry is that row crop tractors are usually one of the last categories that trend, and when they do, it's likely going to be gradual. Well, those old duffers definitely knew their stuff, and it seems to be playing out that way. For smaller row crop tractors, which I'd categorize as 175 to 300 horsepower, those models are down about 5 to 7% annually. Now, as you move larger, for the row crop tractors that are 300 horsepower plus, I'm seeing a lot of those go down 6 to 9% annually. Really leading the pack are those John Deere 8Rs. There seems to be a plethora of those things up in that South Dakota epicenter, and that's trickling over and spilling out everywhere else. I've checked that on Tractor Zoom Pro, and just so we can heat map and see where those machines lie, and that does seem to be the case. One nuance that I want to hit on with row crop tractors, and I know it's not a large volume, but it is a really interesting piece that I know a lot of farmers care about, is the older pre-def models. For instance, I was at AgriVision's rice auction down in Pacific Junction, Iowa, about this time last month, and they had an 8330 that sold. This thing, 4,000 hours, brought $182,000, almost the list price. That doesn't happen in 2024. It barely happened in 2023. 35% more than what it was trending that it potentially should have. But I think a lot of those instances of those pre-def models bringing ridiculous prices are ending, because I'm seeing a lot of the models that were purchased potentially by equipment jockeys looking to flip them, and they're not flipping them fast enough and not for more money right now. And so I think that Cinderella story, it's turning into a pumpkin. It might be coming to an end. I don't think it's going to crash, but I don't see that hype continuing for too much longer. Okay, let's move on to something that had a lot of hype. Self-propelled sprayers. They've been one of the most volatile things, even more than Class 8 combines. They held their value really well in 23, even the first couple sales that we saw in 24, but that was about it. Following some older John Deere R4045s, the Case Patriot 4440s, and even newer John Deere 4010Rs. The Case Patriot, Icarus principle again, didn't rise as much, it didn't fall as much, but it's still down about 10% year over year. But those John Deere models, anywhere from about 14 to 19% drop year over year. Again, sprayers have a lot of nuances depending on the features that they have on their booms, but still, most sprayers taking a pretty big licking. To wrap this up, planters. Now, planters, I cannot go into all the valuations in a 10-minute video, but what I can tell you are that I've talked to a lot of dealers, large and small, across the country, and the lack of orders that they put into the manufacturers for these for the following year is kind of astounding. And so I would really expect to see a big drawdown on the number of planters on dealers' lots next year. And talking with farmers out there, their ability to upgrade on row kits, whether they're doing it themselves, whether they're hiring dealers to do it, or completely retrofitting a bar, that interest is going up. And as that tech gets adopted, it's going to be easier and easier to actually accomplish and accomplish well. So I'd really expect to see those orders for planters continue to diminish on the dealers' lots. So that should at least reduce the amount of supply of some planters that are out there. So anyways, this was Tractor Zoom's Trends in 10. Stay tuned. Make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast. If you're watching this one on Spotify or YouTube, wherever you get your content, I'd actually appreciate you to leave a comment. Let us know if you like these Trends in 10. We can do more of them. So thumbs up, like, share, subscribe, all that good business. But again, this is Andy Campbell with Beyond the Hood with Tractor Zoom, giving you our Tractor Zoom Trends in 10. Take care, and everybody. See you next time.